The Weight of a Morning, Los Angeles, 1928. The dawn of March 9th, 1928. Creeps over the horizon of Los Angeles not with the golden promise of Hollywood, but with a dusty, industrious gray of a city built on sweat and rigid hierarchy. The air carries the faint scent of eucalyptus and coal smoke, settling over the modest wood-frame houses of the working class. In one such house, the silence of the early hour is broken by the gentle creak of floorboards. Christine Collins moved with the practiced efficiency of a woman who carries the weight of her world on two shoulders. Shoulders that, while slight, are reinforced by a quiet, unwavering iron. She approaches the bed where 9-year-old Walter lies in a soft cocoon of sleep. In this moment, before the gears of the city begin to grind, there is a sacred stillness. She wakes him not with a jar or a shout, but with the tenderness of a woman whose every heartbeat is synchronized with his. As Walter stirs, the room fills with a familiar, comfortable friction of mother and son who are each other's entire universe. There is a ritual they perform, one that seems mundane, but is actually a profound act of recording a life. Christine stands Walter against the wall. She takes a pencil, its lead sharp and precise, and places it atop his head with a steady hand. She makes a mark on the wood. It is a measurement of growth, a physical testament to the fact that he is becoming more than he was yesterday. They joke, their voices mingling in a light-hearted dance of morning banter. Walter's laughter is the fuel that will power Christine through her grueling shift at the telephone company. She sees his height, his lanky limbs, and his bright eyes, and she sees a future. She has no way of knowing that this pencil mark, this tiny scratch on a piece of timber, will soon become the most significant piece of evidence in a war against a systemic empire of corruption. The walk to school is punctuated by the rhythmic clatter of the city's rising energy. Christine drops him off, watching him disappear into a sea of children, before heading to her own battlefield, the Los Angeles Telephone Company. Here, the atmosphere shifts from the warmth of the home to the frantic mechanical pulse of the switchboard. As a supervisor, Christine is on roller skates, gliding behind rows of women who act as the nervous system of the city, plugging and unplugging the cord to human connection. She is a woman in a position of authority in an era that barely tolerates it, and she maintains her command with a mixture of professional distance and maternal steel. The afternoon brings a reunion at the school gates. They board a cable car, the wood and iron groaning under the weight of the city's commuters. Walter is uncharacteristically quiet until the motion of the car loosens his tongue. He tells her about a fight, a clash of words and fists sparked by a classmate's cruelty. The other boy had told Walter that his father hated him. Christine's reaction is not one of anger, but of a deep, sorrowful clarity. She looks at her son, seeing the shadow of a man who isn't there. She corrects him with a voice that is soft but absolute. His father didn't hate him, she explains, because his father didn't even know him. She paints a picture of a man who wasn't a villain, but a coward, someone so paralyzed by the looming weight of responsibility that he simply vanished into the horizon before he had to face it. It is a heavy truth for a 9-year-old, but Walter smiles, accepting the logic of a mother who has never lied to him. In his eyes, as long as he is Christine, the absence of father is merely a footnote. The next morning, however, the rhythm is broken. A telephone call, shrill and demanding, shatters the early quiet. A colleague is ill. The company needs Christine. The disappointment on Walter's face is a physical blow. They were supposed to go to the movies. He sighs, his small frame slumping, but he nods with the stoicism of a child raised by a working parent. Christine promises him a sandwich in the fridge and mentions that the neighborhood girls will look on him. She leaves it with a kiss and a promise of tomorrow, stepping out into a world that is about to swallow her whole. The silence of the house, the disappearance. The shift at the telephone company feels longer than usual, the air thick with the heat of 1,000 connecting conversations. As Christine prepares to leave, her boss, Ben Harris, stops her. His praise is genuine, but there is an underlying current of something more, a dinner invitation that masquerades as a business meeting but feels like a courtship. Christine, floating on the cloud nine of a potential promotion and the prospect of better life for her and Walter, agrees. She leaves the building with a lightness in her step, the future looking brighter than it ever has. But as she approaches her street, the atmosphere changes. The neighborhood feels wrong. The air is too still, the light fading into an eerie, bruised purple. She walks to the front door, calling Walter's name, expecting the burst of energy that usually greets her. There's only silence. The sandwich is still in the fridge. The house feels cold, despite the lingering heat of the day. Christine moves from room to room, her voice rising in pitch, the Walter that was a call of love becoming a plea of desperation. She rushes outside, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. She asks the neighbors. She corners the local children, but the answers are all the same: a shrug, a shake of the head, a no. Panic, in its purest form, begins to take root in her chest. It is a cold, suffocating vine that wraps around her heart. She returns to the house and dials the police. The man who answers, Detective Leslie Barra, speaks with a bored, practiced apathy of a bureaucrat. He tells her what he tells every frantic mother. Wait! He explains that children often lose track of time, that they wander, that she is reacting exactly like 100 other hysterical women. He refuses to take her seriously, his voice a barrier of institutional indifference. Christine hangs up, the dial tone sounding like a funeral knell. She spends a night in a vigil of terror, pacing the floor, her eyes glued to the door, listening for a footstep that never comes. Every creak of the house is a false promise. Every shadow in the street is a ghost. By the time the sun rises, she is a hollowed-out version of the woman who woke Walter just 24 hours ago. When the police finally arrive, they do so with a clinical detachment. They take her information. They ask for a photograph. They note Walter's height. They treat the disappearance not as a tragedy, but as a file to be managed. Christine stands in the middle of her living room, surrounded by men in uniforms who seem more interested in their paperwork than in the child who has vanished into the ether. She is beginning to realize that in this city, she is alone. The following weeks are a blur of agonizing calls and false leads. Christine becomes her own detective, her office at the telephone company turning into a command center. She calls Las Vegas. She calls San Francisco. She calls every precinct within 100 miles. Her eyes are perpetually rimmed with red, her body thinning under the strain of a grief that has no outlet. At the same time, the voice of Reverend Gustav Briegleb begins to echo through the city's radios. He is a man of God who has lost faith in the men of the law. From his pulpit, he lambasts the LAPD, calling them a den of thieves and corrupt thugs who are more interested in protecting their image than protecting the vulnerable. He prays for Christine, despite never having met her, using her tragedy as a spotlight to illuminate the dark corners of a police department that is rotting from the inside out. 5 months pass. 5 months of dead ends. 5 months of Christine looking at that pencil mark on the wall and wondering if her son is still growing somewhere she cannot reach. Meanwhile, in a small town in Illinois, a boy and a man sit in a diner. The man realizes he cannot pay. He leaves the boy as collateral, promising to return. He never does. 2 hours later, the owner of the diner, suspicious and worried, calls the local authorities. The boy is taken into custody, and for the LAPD, he is the answer to a prayer they didn't even know they were making. The spectacle of the train, the false return. The call comes to the telephone company like a thunderclap. Captain J.J. Jones and Detective Ibarra arrive with good news. They have found Walter. For a moment, Christine is reborn. The air returns to her lungs, and the color floods back into her cheeks. There is a celebration among the operators, a shared burst of joy for the woman who has suffered so publicly. The LAPD, sensing a massive PR victory to silence the likes of Briegleb, organizes a grand spectacle. The reunion is set for the Los Angeles train station. It is not a private moment for a mother and child. It is a media event. Chief of Police James Davis is there, his chest puffed out, surrounded by a phalanx of photographers. The air is thick with the scent of flash powder and the roar of the crowd. The train pulls in, a behemoth of steam and steel. A boy steps down onto the platform. Christine moves forward, her arms outstretched, her heart ready to burst. But as the boy enters the circle of light, she freezes. Her hands drop to her sides. The world slows down, the noise of the crowd fading into a dull, underwater hum. She looks at the boy, and she sees a stranger. That is not my son, she says. Her voice is small but clear, cutting through the celebratory atmosphere like a knife. Captain Jones is at her side in an instant. His smile is fixed, his eyes hard as flint. He leans in, his voice a low, threatening rumble masked as concern. He tells her she is in shock. He tells her that 5 months of captivity can change a child's face, that his hair has grown, that his trauma has altered his very essence. He treats her disbelief as a symptom of a fragile female mind. He turns to the boy. What is your name? The boy recites an answer. Walter Collins. He gives an address. But the words are hollow, sounding like lines memorized for a school play. There is no spark of recognition, no surge of love. Christine is drowning in a sea of flashbulbs. Jones practically forces her to pose with the boy, his hand a heavy weight on her shoulder, compelling her to smile for the newspapers. The headline is already written. The LAPD brings the boy home. To preserve the department's image, they are willing to ignore the most fundamental truth of a mother's heart. Overwhelmed and coerced by the sheer force of institutional pressure, Christine takes the stranger home. The shrinking spine, gaslighting and betrayal. The night is a silent horror. Christine sits across the dinner table from the boy, watching him eat. He doesn't use his manners, the manners she had spent years instilling in Walter. He moves differently. He smells differently. The breaking point comes in the bathroom. As she towels him off after a bath, she sees it, the physical proof that cannot be explained away by shock. The boy is circumcised. Walter was not. Her breath hitches. She grabs the boy and drags him to the wall, to the pencil mark she made 5 months ago. She stands him against the wood. The boy is 3 inches shorter than Walter was in March. Christine's terror turns into a cold, focused fury. She goes to Captain Jones, demanding an explanation, demanding that the search for the real Walter be reopened. Jones doesn't listen. He counterattacks. He tells her she is being unappreciative. He implies that she is trying to shirk her duties as a mother because she found life easier without a child. It is a psychological assault designed to make her doubt her own sanity. To appease her, Jones sends a doctor to the house. Dr. Earl Tarr arrives, but he is not a man of science. He is a man of the state. He performs a perfunctory examination, checking the boy's throat while ignoring the 3-inch height difference. He delivers a lecture on how the human spine can shrink under the pressure of kidnapping. He suggests that the kidnappers themselves might have performed the circumcision. Every word out of his mouth is a brick in the wall of a massive, state-sanctioned lie. That night, the boy makes a mistake. As he climbs into Walter's bed, he whispers, "Good night, Mommy." The words trigger an explosion in Christine. She hurls a plate against the wall, the ceramic shattering near the boy's head. She screams for her son, her voice a raw, jagged sound of pure grief. Later, she apologizes to the terrified child, but she remains firm. "You are not my son." The next morning, the betrayal is complete. The newspapers carry an article detailing Christine's refusal to accept her child, painting her as a woman on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Reverend Bregleb calls her, inviting her to breakfast. He tells her the truth about Chief Davis, how he rose to power by using gun squads to eliminate criminals and competition alike. He warns her that she is now a target. If she proves the police wrong, she exposes their incompetence and their corruption. She is no longer just a mother. She is a threat to the empire. Christine doesn't back down. She visits Walter's dentist, who confirms that the boy in her house lacks a specific muscle gap that Walter had. She visits Walter's teacher, who watches the boy fail to find his own desk in a classroom where he spent a year. Both professionals agree to put their findings in writing. Armed with this proof, Christine stands on the steps of the courthouse, telling the gathered reporters that the police have brought her the wrong child. The image of the heroic LAPD is beginning to crack. Chief Davis's response is swift and brutal. He orders Jones to take care of it. Christine is summoned to the station for a conference. Jones doesn't debate her proof. He calls her a liar, a delusional woman who is a danger to the child and herself. When she refuses to recant her story, he nods to 2 men standing by the door. They take her away. The warehouse of the inconvenient, the asylum. The intake process at the insane asylum is a calculated ritual of dehumanization. Christine is stripped of her clothes, her dignity, and her name. She is subjected to a crude, cold examination that treats her body like a piece of faulty machinery. She is locked behind iron bars, not because she is mad, but because she is inconvenient. Here, she meets Carol. Carol is vibrant, cynical, and deeply sane. She explains the reality of Code 12. In 1928 Los Angeles, if a woman pisses off a police officer, if she files a complaint, or if she simply knows too much, she is brought here. The asylum is where the LAPD buries their mistakes. The head doctor, Jonathan Steele, is a man of clinical cruelty. He doesn't want to heal Christine. He wants her to sign a confession. He wants her to admit she was wrong and that the police were right. He uses every psychological trick in the book, calling her a failure as a mother, implying that her delusions are harming the boy in her house. Christine fights back with a quiet, burning resilience. She watches as other women are taken away for shock treatments, vivid, horrified displays of state-sanctioned torture. Carol warns her that she has 3 choices: be a good girl and stay in the system, keep her mouth shut and go home a broken woman, or fight and risk the shocks. During one meeting with Steele, Christine's frustration boils over. She stutters, her words tripping over each other as she tries to explain the height difference, the dental records, the teacher's testimony. Steele smiles, noting her agitation, as further proof of her madness. Every attempt she makes to prove her sanity only reinforces the narrative they have constructed for her. In the ward, Christine finds a strange, desperate solidarity with the other Code 12 women. They share stories of the men who put them there. Carol reveals she lost 2 babies of her own, and that her defiance is the only thing she has left. She tells Christine the motto that will become their anthem: "Fuck them and the horse they rode on." It is a moment of dark, defiant humor in a place that was built to extinguish joy. While Christine is being force-fed medication and threatened with electricity, the world outside is beginning to tilt. Reverend Bregleb has noticed her disappearance. He is mobilizing his congregation, his radio broadcast becoming a roar of outrage. The LAPD thinks they have silenced her, but they have only succeeded in making her a martyr for a cause that is about to explode. The horror buried in dust. Wineville. While the city of Los Angeles is obsessed with the drama of Christine Collins, a different kind of investigation is unfolding in the rural dust of Wineville. Detective Ibarra, following a lead on a missing child from Canada, finds himself at the Northcote Ranch. The air here is different. It is heavy, stagnant, smelling of dry earth and something metallic. He encounters the owner, Gordon Northcote, a man whose pale skin and nervous energy set off every alarm in Ibarra's seasoned gut. Northcote flees, but he leaves behind a 15-year-old boy named Sanford Clark. Ibarra takes Sanford into custody, intending to return him to Canada. But in the quiet of the interrogation room, Sanford begins to unravel. The sound of a ruler hitting a table triggers a flashback, a vision of a man with an axe, the spray of blood, the rhythmic thud of a blade hitting bone. Sanford tells Ibarra's story that descends into the darkest pits of human depravity. He describes how Northcote would lure boys into his car by using Sanford as bait. If they see a kid, they think it's okay, Sanford whispers, his eyes wide with trauma that can never be healed. He describes the chicken coops, the cramped, filthy cages where the boys were kept like livestock. He describes the crowding, and how Northcote would resolve it by taking an axe to the children. Sometimes he forced Sanford to help. Sometimes he made Sanford bury the bodies in the shallow, dusty graves behind the house. Ibarra sits in stunned silence, his cigarette burning down to his fingers. He pulls out a stack of photos of missing children. Sanford begins to sort through them, his hands shaking. He creates a pile of the faces he remembers, 10, 15, 20 children. Ibarra looks at one of the photos Sanford has set aside. He turns it over. Walter Collins, age 9. The detective feels the world fall away. The good news, they gave Christine, the boy on the train, the headlines. It was all a lie built on the graves of murdered children. He grabs 2 officers and heads for the ranch with Sanford in tow. Under the scorching sun of Wineville, they begin to dig. Sanford points to a spot where a coop once stood. The shovel hits something hard. They unearth a shoe, a skeletal hand, a pair of rib cages. The physical reality of Northcote's work is more horrifying than anything Ibarra could have imagined. As his partners turn away in disgust, Ibarra realizes that he is standing in the center of a nightmare that would destroy the LAPD. The fall of the empire, justice. The news of the discovery at the ranch reaches Captain Jones, just as Reverend Briegleb and an army of lawyers arrive at the asylum. The LAPD knows they have lost. They try to move Christine to hide her, but Briegleb is too fast. In her final meeting with Dr. Steele, Christine is offered a deal, sign a confession, and go home. She looks the doctor in the eye and delivers Carol's line with a cold, triumphant pride. Steele orders the shocks, but it is too late. The order comes down from the station. Let her go. Christine walks out of the asylum into a world that is shouting her name. She sees a newspaper headline, "Bodies found at ranch, Collins child believed dead." She faints, the weight of the truth finally crushing her. But Briegleb is there to catch her. The trials that follow are a reckoning. Gordon Northcote is captured in Canada, his own family turning him in. The fake Walter, Arthur Hutchins, confesses that the police told him a lie, that they coach him on his answers just to get the case closed. Chief Davis and Captain Jones are hauled before a committee, their corruption exposed to the light of day. In the courtroom, Christine meets Leanne Clay, another mother whose child was a victim of the ranch. They share a bond that no one else can understand, a connection forged in the fires of shared, unbearable loss. The verdicts are handed down. Gordon Northcote is sentenced to hang. Captain Jones is permanently suspended. Chief Davis is demoted. The laws regarding commitment to asylums are overhauled, ensuring that Code 1-2 can never happen again. The other women of the asylum are released, Carol among them, sharing a final, knowing smile with Christine as they step into the sunlight of a new Los Angeles. The long shadow, the execution. 2 years pass. Christine is back at the telephone company, but she is a changed woman. The cloud 9 of her earlier life is gone, replaced by a quiet, enduring gravity. She still makes calls. She still searches. A message comes from S.S. Hahn, her lawyer. Gordon Northcote, facing the gallows at San Quentin, wants to see her. He claims he wants to tell her the truth about Walter. Christine travels to the prison, her heart a mixture of dread and a desperate, flickering hope. She sits across from the monster who haunted her dreams. But when the moment comes, Northcote clams up. He talks about God's forgiveness. He calls Walter an angel, but he refuses to give her the one thing she needs. The final answer. Christine erupts, throwing him against the glass, screaming for the truth. Northcote remains silent, a coward until the very end. She stays for the execution. She watches as they lead him to the noose. Northcote, who was so calm in his cell, loses his mind on the steps. He has to be carried by the guards. As they place the bag over his head, he begins to sing Silent Night. The floor drops, the rope jerks, and the monster is gone. But for Christine, there is no closure. There is only the silence of the prison yard and the unanswered question of her son's final moments. The pencil mark on the wall. Hope. It is 1935. 7 years have passed since that morning in March. Christine is still at the telephone company. Her life a cycle work and a search for missing children. Her friends at the office celebrate the Oscars. But Christine remains in her office, her focus elsewhere. A phone call comes. It is Leanne Clay. They have found one of the boys. Christine rushes to the station. She finds David Clay, Leanne's son, being interviewed by Detective Ibarra. David tells a story that shatters the narrative of the ranch murders. He describes how he, two other boys, and Walter staged an escape one night. He describes Walter as a hero. When David got stuck on a fence, Walter didn't keep running. He went back. He freed David as the lights of the house came on, and Northgate began his pursuit. They ran in separate directions into the dark. David survived by finding a woman who took him in, and he was only now brave enough to come forward. He never saw Walter again, but he saw him get away. Christine steps out into the Los Angeles night with Detective Ibarra. The city is different now. Cleaner, perhaps, but still built on the same dusty ground. Ibarra consoles her, telling her that her son was a hero. Christine looks at him, her eyes bright with a light that hasn't been there for 7 years. She says that if David survived, then Walter might have, too. He might be out there, afraid, waiting for the right moment to come home. She tells Ibarra that she has something now that she didn't have before. "What's that?" he asks. She looks toward the horizon, her voice a steady, unbreakable vow. Hope. The screen fades black on a woman who refused to be erased, a mother who fought an empire and won the only thing that matters, the right to never stop looking for her son.